This is the Weekly Scramble, a place where we chat about life over a cold one or two. It's time to belly up to the pod with Mike Frattallone and your host, Chris Reavers.
Well, looky here. It's a Tuesday, and that means it's time for the Weekly Scramble, and that means it's me. Hi, Chris Reavers, and that's Mike Frattallone with Frattallone's Hardware and Garden Stores. Hello, Michael.
How you doing, Reavers?
I'm good. This is 2 weeks in a row. Look at us.
Yeah, we always do the show.
I know, I'm kidding.
You know, we've done a lot of weeks in a row in the past. You just are a traveler. I'm just sitting here working.
I know. Look at me.
Yeah, you're like a world traveler.
Well, we were actually in discussion, that being the one that runs my house, and I'm the one that runs around my house, copyright Sam Cassell, back in the early 2000s. But she says, 4th of July. I said, no. We're good. We ain't going nowhere for 4th of July.
Isn't that a shame? I mean, America needs your...
But you know what? Yes, in a sense, but also we have also not stayed home for the 4th of July in a long time.
I assume you live in an area with some young kids around there.
Yes, and that I want to experience my new town. I've lived there just over a year. I want to experience that for the 4th of July.
Could you be the guy who invests in some M80s and blows some fingers off? I mean, you could do something really cool.
I may or may not be a guy who bought some driving in one of my trips across the country and back, and they've been sitting in my garage for over a year now.
Oh, you're kidding. Your kids don't.
I bought them in Ohio like about a year ago.
They're not fascinated by like, what are those, Dad?
Well, so here's what's cool. So the house that we purchased, inside of it, they had really, really nice handmade cabinets inside the garage.
Oh, nice.
And when I saw those when we first looked at the house, I thought, well, they're gonna take those. So I didn't even expect them to be there.
Oh, okay.
Once we closed on the house, but then we did the walkthrough.
They were still there.
And I went, well, wait, what? And I'm thinking, well, they're gonna take those out, but no, they were left behind. So I thought, sweet, I get to anyway. So yeah, they've been sitting in there. That's why the kids haven't.
Okay, so I bought a house, last year sometime, right? And it was a single old guy owned this house, and it has a little gym in it, and it had like a ton of workout equipment. I mean, a ton, like a treadmill, a stair stepper, like a full bench press machine. I mean, like a bunch of it.
Yep.
And I said, the realtor said, hey, he wants like $10,000 for all that stuff. And I said, no. Like it's all used equipment, right? It never sells for $10,000. And I said, tell him if he'd like to leave it there, that's fine. We'll take care of it. And if he doesn't, I get it. He can take it out if he needs to.
Sure.
And I was 99% sure that he was going to leave it there. Right, because why wouldn't he? He's got to move it. He's moving into a condo because he's in kind of the dusk of his life. Right, he doesn't need this exercise equipment. So, and I actually saw it up on Craigslist. He was like wanting like $20,000 for all of it on Craigslist. I'm like, well, I know he's not selling it for $20,000. He didn't understand the value of it. So we get to the house, do our final walkthrough. I walk down there. Everything is gone.
No.
He had a tanning bed. I mean, everything was gone. I thought, did he just out of spite spend the time to get someone to come and take it all out? Even though I said, just go ahead and leave it. Like, I don't want it.
Whatever you don't want, yeah.
But if you don't want it, just go ahead and leave it.
Yeah, I don't care.
Although he did leave a ping pong table.
Oh, that's cool.
And it's a really nice ping pong table. It's something I would not have purchased, right? I wouldn't, like if my kid said he wanted a ping pong table, I'd say, go throw a ball outside. You don't need a ping pong table. But it's great.
And now that you have it, you love it.
And now I have it. Now we use it kind of all the time. And it is funny because I do play a lot of ping pong with my daughters, and they are exceptionally good at ping pong. And we do like this kind of, do you know what King of the Hill is? Like you play like three things, and so you always, and I'll not be king for half the time.
Oh, boy.
Which is a little frustrating because I fancy myself a ponger, right? I'm a ping ponger. I mean, and so it is kind of fun watching my girls like get really aggressive till one of my children threw the ping pong paddle.
No, you can't do that.
And I was like, what color is this guy in your world that you think you can lose your mind and throw a paddle in the basement? Didn't hit anything, luckily, because I would have.
But still.
Oh, woof.
I wasn't planning on bringing this up, but you sparked my memory of something that was discussed earlier on the Garage Logic podcast held in this very studio.
Yeah, right here.
And I don't know if you're aware of this. I assume you are because you're on top of a lot of things, money related, business related.
No. Okay, yeah.
No.
Okay.
I need to see your reaction.
Okay,
Are you ready for this? Because I'm almost positive you're aware of this, so I know I'm not pulling something out of left field on you. the new Biden administration mortgage rules that could increase fees for borrowers with good credit in order to offset costs for less qualified buyers went into effect Monday. And they have spawned memories of the 2008 financial crisis that was ignited in large part by the collapse of subprime mortgages.
It's weird. It's weird that we would incentivize people who can't
To have piss poor credit.
Well, it's not a blessing to have someone get into a mortgage if they can't afford it. Right?
No.
It's just not a blessing. You're doing them a disservice,
You
not
are.
a service.
Yes.
And what a shame, right? What a shame. But I do think this is a very visual example of a progressive tax code, because we pay, or I'm not going to say we, I'm going to just, let's say a person that makes money already pays taxes for people who don't make money.
Yep.
That's already built in. This is a very visual thing, though, because they're saying if you're good with money, if you have money, if you have a 20% down payment, you have to pay extra. And if you don't have all those things, you get to benefit from a lower interest rate, right?
Yep.
And it's super clear for people to see, because every month on their mortgage statement, they'll see a Biden charge of $72 or $44, whatever it is. And so they're going to look for every single month they have that mortgage. And as long as this stands, and I don't actually know if it's going to stand, I don't know if it's going to happen.
It's been met with a lot of criticism, thankfully, on both sides of the aisle.
A lot of criticism on both sides. But I don't know what the issue is. I am not for it, because I'm not for it because I'm not against charging the higher income people more. That's not what I'm not against. What I'm against is you're not doing somebody a service. It's not a blessing to make someone barely afford a house. And I know homeownership is very important, right? I get that.
Yep.
But
easiest way to develop wealth.
It's a way to develop wealth, right? But if you don't have money, it's not a way to develop wealth. It's a way
Correct.
to,
Yep.
oh crap, I can't afford this house. Why did I do this? Now I'm really pinning myself in. I can't afford all this other stuff, maybe day-to-day stuff. And it's just a shame. But being so visual, people can see this and they're losing their minds. Rightfully so, right? But our tax code is doing just the same thing, right? When Joe Souchere writes these huge tax checks, and he's paying, you got to look at it this way. State of Minnesota, roughly half the people don't pay taxes in the state of Minnesota, right?
Oh, I was not aware of that.
So you got 5 million people?
Yep.
So if you pay $1 in tax, you're paying the equivalent of 2.5 million people, right? So you're like, okay, wait, I'm already paying more than 2.5 million people in Minnesota if I pay $1 in tax. But if you really get to the top end of the tax code, you're paying the equivalent of hundreds of thousands of more people. I mean, it's already, but it's so obscure and so, convoluted that you just don't get it. But this little thing on mortgages is pissing people off. I have a nephew who, he and his beautiful wife just buying their first house.
Nice.
They're buying it out by you, not in Carver, but I called you Chan. Buying it in Chanhassen, right?
Nice.
And I told you knew where it was.
That's where I bought my first house.
That's right. And
Yep.
they're doing it. And it's an expensive house. They have good jobs, right? They have good jobs, and it's an expensive house. And I think it's $72 a month right now from here on that they have to spend to help someone else afford their mortgage.
It's just,
We
live in freaking backwards
Yeah,
town.
my nephew's super conservative, right? So conservative that he has a bunch of money in the bank but won't invest it, right? Because he's like, I'm not letting that go.
Don't know what
right?
happens, right?
Nothing can happen, but he's built this big nest egg, and he's besides himself. He's like because that's like someone stealing $72 from him.
Absolutely.
I'm like, what do you think's happening when you were paying taxes, dude? Like the taxes are doing the exact same thing. You just don't know the person you're giving it to.
You're that uncle. I see. You're that
I know.
uncle.
I feel bad. I don't think it's going to go anywhere. I mean, I know it's already a rule, but I think many states, as of today, states were filing suit over it.
Yes.
I believe.
I think it was, Joe said it was at 26. I can't remember.
Yeah, like
the exact
literally
number.
half the states said, we're not doing that.
And I know, surprisingly, we were not. We being the state of Minnesota, we were not on that list.
No, we were not one of them.
We're in favor.
You know what we're more concerned with?
What's that?
Cannabis.
Oh,
Yeah, did you know that? Did you hear that we passed?
We
some
passed legislation. Was that last week?
Yeah,
last
last
Thursday,
Friday.
Friday,
Yeah, Thursday,
whatever
Friday.
it was. Tell me more.
Okay, I just have a quiz for you. This is a little quiz. And, we were the craft beer show. I'm going to give you a little hint. Craft beer. We were the craft beer show. So out of all these industries, craft beer, eggs, chocolate, and cannabis.
Okay, one more time. Craft beer, eggs,
chocolate, which is a huge industry, and cannabis.
Okay.
Which one has the highest retail sales projected in 2023?
Well, those are 4 extremely popular items.
Eggs.
Let's see. Hold on.
Craft beer, chocolate, and cannabis.
I'm gonna do the math this way.
Okay.
Not everybody's old enough to drink craft beer.
True.
Not everybody's old enough for cannabis.
True.
Everybody's old enough for eggs and chocolate.
Yes.
I would say it's got to be one of the digestible products that is eligible for everyone to consume. Eggs is probably not as popular as chocolate because chocolate is loved by everybody.
True.
I would go with chocolate.
Okay. No. But good guess.
Okay.
Your reasoning was super great.
Logic. I used a little logic.
So cannabis retail sales are to surpass $33.5 billion.
Holy crap.
$33.5 billion in 2023 alone. That's just legal
this is a
cannabis.
projection.
This is a projection, but it's going to hit it. It did
Sure.
20 billion last year.
Okay.
That's just legal cannabis, only legal cannabis.
Wow.
The craft beer industry is roughly $12 billion. So it's almost 3 times bigger than craft beer.
Now, some have suggested, and you correct me if I'm wrong, that because of the legalization of cannabis in certain parts of this country has led to somewhat of a decline in alcohol consumption. I don't know if that's right.
I thought 100% think that's true.
I thought I read that somewhere.
You're too high to get up and get yourself a next beer.
Well, but no, everyone's got a vice, and maybe they've just switched their vice because this product wasn't legal 12 months ago or even 12 days ago.
When I was doing all my show prep,
yep.
I read a story about, one thing that was happening, and I was doing show prep from my office computer, right?
Okay.
And I went to a story, and it said, not a 404 error came up, that sometimes when you're going to a website, there's an error.
Yep.
And then I kind of looked again, I bopped back out and tried to go back in. I did not know that I have a filter on my computer at my office. That says you can't look up stories about cannabis. And I'm like, I did not know that.
Really?
Right? Because when I was, back before when Frattallone's owned it, right? Before we were purchased, I guess I would look up anything on my computer. I just never thought of it. It was just my computer. And so, and it did take, it's been 16, 17 months. And it took me a long time to bump into something that I couldn't see.
Okay.
Right.
Sure.
And really it wasn't the story because it was a Fortune magazine story, but there was a tie-in in the link to buy cannabis or something. So that's why they stopped us. But I thought that was really kind of funny. So in this story, they were talking about how in Colorado that cannabis sales are actually down in 2023.
Why is that?
Because they think during COVID, people just stayed home and got high. But that kind of makes me feel a little bit good because I'm thinking to myself, okay, maybe this isn't going to be just a free-for-all and everybody's just going to get high all day long every day.
But is that so that's a dip relative the last 24 to 48 months worth of production.
Yes.
Right? Not okay, in 1999, it was zero.
Yes.
Legally anyway.
This is an 8% dip from last year.
Got it. Okay.
8% dip from last year.
Gotcha.
And, last year was a big year because we were still in COVID and so on.
Sure.
But it hardened me just a little bit because I had that feeling, when I look at my sweet kids, and I think, I don't want you smoking pot. I just don't want you doing it.
Sure.
Right? I just don't think it's the right thing for you to do. I don't think people are the best selves when they're high.
I have to share a funny story when you're done.
But you see where I'm going.
Yeah.
And so I thought, I don't want this just to become legal in Minnesota and then just everybody's high all the time. But to see that Colorado had a pullback, meaning it just wasn't as big as it was the year before, made me think, okay, this is finite. It's not just infinite growth in the pot business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm a pretty much a live and let live guy.
Yeah.
Here's my inhaler. I can't smoke anything.
No, but you could chew the gummies.
Well, I could, yeah. But so I'm not a candidate for certain, and I just choose not to.
Yeah.
But if you want to, you Mike or you whoever, yeah, absolutely, knock yourself out. If you're legal, you have the money, go ahead. Do you. So my son, I can't remember if I've shared this with you or not. I don't even think it'd be possible because I think this was after we did the show last week. So my son had to come with me to work one day. I think it was last week. And he comes in here, does his homework, sits in there. In fact, the Twins are playing a day game. So he had the Twins game on.
Yeah.
He was in heaven.
He didn't care.
He didn't care. So he didn't have to listen to all the bad words that Uncle Joe had to say during and before and after the show. So he sat in here and then we get our stuff done and get all my things done and off we head back home, right? And so this was the first time he had been to Minneapolis in a long time.
Okay.
Because of where we live and where he goes to school and
he's
where we
nowhere close.
No, we never go through the city anymore. Even though I come here every day. So we took a certain route where we drove by a homeless encampment to get home, and he stared at that because obviously that's unusual. That's something that is out of it's not normal.
Yeah, it's definitely should not be normalized.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he sees that, and of course he's a very inquisitive kid, and he harmlessly asks, "Hey, Dad, what's that?" And I said, "Well, what do you think it is, buddy?" And he said, "Well, it looks like a bunch of tents. Is that he didn't say is it a campground? He goes, "Well, what is it?" And I said, "Well, there's people that are homeless, and without getting into it." And I said, "Well, there's people that are homeless, bud. So unfortunately, that's kind of where they live, is right off the street." And this is where the Chris Reavers School of Parenting really takes off. No. And so then he just kind of goes, huh. He just sits there, and I can tell he's thinking about it. And then, of course, the question comes up. And I love having open dialogue with my kids. It's my favorite part of the day because we do it to school every single morning. It's fantastic because I love listening to where their minds go, right? And so then he goes, huh, well, why is that? And I thought, okay, I can go one of two directions here.
You could red pill him right now.
I could, exactly. I could say, well, here's exactly why. And I thought, you know what? He's now 11. This is probably the good opportunity to, he and I have had some big boy conversations.
Yeah.
And so I'll say, well, bud, sometimes life takes turns on you, and sometimes, you may or may not make good decisions. Sometimes you can't, it's not really your fault, but you just end up on hard times. And I said, it all starts with smoking.
Oh, did you really do that? Oh, gosh. Smoking's the gateway drug that gets you to live in a tent. Oh, that poor kid.
And I just went on a boat.
Oh, no.
But I started there.
That poor kid.
And I could just in the rearview mirror, because he was sitting in the seat behind me, and I could see his eyes like just getting bigger and bigger. And I thought,
he's going to see one of his teachers standing outside smoking a heater because he just dealt with 40 little brats during gym class. He's going to be having a one little dart outside.
Mrs.
And
Smith,
he's going to say,
no!
Why would you do that?
I don't want you to live in a tent.
In a tent down in Minneapolis? That is funny. You can only play that. Play it now because in 12 years old, 13 years old, I mean, kids get pregnant at 13. I'm going to tell you. Not boys, Mike. Not boys.
Well, not yet.
Yeah, not yet.
Wait till this state gets a hold of
who
them.
knows? Maybe. Yeah, I mean, things happen at those ages.
Yeah.
Not to any of our kids that we know, but it does. I have a wide-ranging variety of kids with, the oldest one watches cartoons, the youngest one, like, hey, let's talk about the profit margin of that. I mean, really weird in-depth thing. Yeah. And they're all the same brightness. Yep. Just some care
it's
to
what
have
they choose to.
Yeah, they just want to have a softer life. I did. Let me tell you the story. Let me regale you with the story. So, my daughter said she'd like to go golfing, right? So her and some friends wanted to go golfing. And I was like, okay, well, she's not a great golfer, but a couple of these other girls are on the golf team, but they're all on kind of the developing golf league, right? Okay. They're just learning how to play, and they're in 9th grade, right? So I said, okay, let's go. We'll take it to the golf course. And they played their round. They played 9 holes in about 2.5 hours in an empty golf course. So it took them a little bit of time, right? Okay. But no one was waiting for them, and they weren't waiting for anybody. They know all the rules relatively and so on. So this is, again, Sunday night. After that, she said, hey, it's one of the girls' birthdays. I'd like to take them to dinner. I said, go ahead, get them dinner. And so I come to pick them up at like 9:15 on a Saturday night. Mm-hmm. Started at 6 o'clock, 9:15. Actually, started at like 5:30, 9:15, right? On the way home, my daughter turns to me and she goes, I have an unbelievable amount of homework. I said, what? I said, did you just go to dinner all relaxed? Oh, by the way, order dessert. And did you play golf and then dare to hop into the car with me at almost 9:30 on Sunday night and say, oh my God, I can't believe how much homework I have? I said, you have to be joking me. You cannot be serious. And sure enough, that's exactly what she did. So she got home, cranked out as much homework as she could, and then woke up the next morning as I jogged her out of bed.
Boy, she sounds an awful lot like a guy I know.
Oh, really?
That is 100% you.
Oh, yeah. I think that would be.
That's 100%
the only
you.
difference between her and I is when she said, I have a lot of homework, I'd say, you know what? I don't care. I have a lot of homework. I'm not doing it. I'm going to have to sweet talk my 9th grade teacher.
So 2 things that I wanted to share with you, and you being, and I still call you this to this day, but you being Mr. St. Paul.
I still, even though I no longer live in St. Paul, I still proclaim that I do.
It's your city, right?
Yeah.
It's St. Paul is your city.
When I order something on Amazon, it still says my address is St. Paul. So
There you
whatever.
go.
Yeah.
So we have to talk about the Wild. And here's why we have to talk about the Wild. Mm-hmm. Because there was, I believe it was a Star Tribune article that came out this morning. And I've been thinking about this for some time because in my opinion, and I don't really care. I love watching hockey.
Yep.
I don't give a damn. You win or lose. I knew they were not going to beat the Stars, but whatever.
Did you know they were not going to beat them Friday night in that 6th game?
I said it on the show. You know, Rookie's doing his rookie bit where he's saying, "Oh no, we have to believe in them." And I'm looking at him saying, "Dude, they're not."
Yeah, Joe was thinking that they were going to win that one and lose
then I
in
said,
7.
"No, they're going to lose Game 6."
Yeah.
I said that on the show on Friday.
Did, yeah.
So they don't get nearly enough heat, in my opinion. They have lost in the first round. 7 of the last 8 times they've been to the playoffs, right?
Okay, so let's
They're
go.
the Vikings of hockey.
Yeah. Well, no, they're not even the Vikings of hockey because at least the Vikings have gotten to the Super Bowl, right?
True.
So they are the Timberwolves of hockey.
Right, but the Timberwolves get a lot more heat than the Wild do. But here's my point.
Okay, so on a heat point. Okay.
Here's my point, though.
Yeah.
I think the Timberwolves crowd is always reflective of how this town views that team accurately.
Okay.
So you will have a regular season game on a Tuesday against, I'm trying to think, against the Washington Wizards. That's maybe going to have 8,000 or 9,000 people there, right? Mm-hmm. But you'd have that same Tuesday night game against the Carolina Hurricanes, and the X is packed.
Is it because it's in St. Paul? Although it's been packed since day one.
It's been packed since day one, even though they had that. They were anticipating that lull, then they signed Parisi and Suter, and then attendance went through the roof again. So the honeymoon period has essentially been since 2000.
Yeah, and that's true. I was at Friday's game. I was lucky enough to go to that game.
Nice.
And, good for me. So I got to be real passionate about the Wild on the very last game of the year. That's what I really cared about. And there was this moron behind me screaming
Oh, no.
anti-homosexual tropes to Suter because he was so mad.
And I'm sure Ryan heard him.
Yeah, and I'm sure that he was the guy who had a Ryan Suter jersey on
100%.
2 years ago.
Yes.
And he was in love with Suter. So maybe he was displacing his love for Suter. Now he was mad. But I'm like, dude, relax.
Stop.
So he went to play for a different team for $5 more million. What would you do?
And not to mention, sir,
Yeah.
behind Mike Frattallone
Yeah.
at the hockey game, you are aware that this team bought him out.
Yeah.
He didn't choose to leave.
It was just so funny.
Even though I do hate Suter for what he did to Kaprizov, but that's another story.
I mean, those things happen.
My point is, with that very guy is 2 things to me. He represents the exact reason I hate going to sporting events. Mm-hmm. And that guy is the exact reason of what I'm bringing up. The fact that the Wild just seemingly get a free pass every single time, every single year, even though they haven't advanced in a long time. But here's a franchise that cuts loose 2 players that hinder their salary cap going forward. I'm not saying it wasn't a necessary move. It probably was to
the right thing.
improve the room.
Yep.
Okay, so they do that. Then they have that guy go to the team that left you 30 years ago and helps them oust you in the playoffs.
Sure.
I mean, my God, if this was the Twins, could you imagine the absolute onslaught that franchise would, the cheap pull ads, blah, blah, blah. My God, it would be a completely different tune.
Tell me this, because I don't know sports like you do. Okay, I believe you are well versed in the art of the sports.
Thank
Plus,
you.
you're on Monday Night Sports Talk. I mean, you are on a very popular
big
sports
deal.
talk. You are a big deal. Do you think is try and resolve? You don't see a hockey player look crestfallen. They're working infinitely harder than what a basketball player may. When things are going bad with basketball players, you see it in their gait, you see it in their face,
Sure.
you see it in their try-hardness, they're not running up and down the court. I mean, your shift in a hockey game is a minute 20 or whatever, right?
Right.
You are sprinting for a minute 20, right? As hard as you can play.
Yeah.
And
you, in my opinion, hockey players are the toughest people in sports.
what did the guy who landed on the goalie skate and had 72 stitches in his face?
72 stitches and he missed it. Well,
half a
Eriksson
period?
Ek tried to play game, whatever it was, 4 with a broken leg.
With a broken leg. Yeah, I mean, think of that. So is it possible that we as Minnesotans, because we're hardy, we look down and we say, they're still trying. They didn't win, and maybe they weren't great on power plays.
Yep,
They had all this, and maybe their skill set wasn't there, but it wasn't for a lack of trying. But when you watch the Timberwolves play sometimes, or any basketball team, you get to really see the emotions on their face.
I have it.
Yeah.
Especially the people that plunk down the hard-earned money and a lot of it to go to the X and bring their kids or whatever, or go with their buddies,
expensive,
whatever. It's
super
not
expensive.
cheap to go to the X. It's because that guy and or gal that does that can relate to the Marcus Foligno because they probably either themselves or have kids that grew up playing hockey, and so they understand that mindset, that lifestyle, that whatever it is. Whereas with the professional basketball player, there's not really, well, there's still, I still contend that there's just as many basketball fans in this state as there are hockey fans.
Oh, yeah.
And some of them, like me, are fans of both sports.
Yep.
But I think we relate to the hockey lifestyle way more than we do to the basketball lifestyle.
You think so?
Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I don't know if
We're
that's
the state
true.
of hockey.
But I played basketball, not hockey. I mean, I think more kids play basketball than they do hockey, don't you think?
Well, I just think
the
the grander statewide, there's way more people that play basketball than hockey, I would think.
Just think of it. Yeah, I mean, countrywide for sure. Just think that somebody playing in the NCAA tournament finished the tournament, won or did not win the tournament,
Okay.
and then now they're playing on playoff hockey teams right now, like college kids.
Yep.
Wouldn't that be weird? And that they can actually be good enough, strong enough, talented enough to play on a NHL,
Right. That's pretty cool.
Stanley Cup potential team. I mean, that is unbelievable. You're going from college, and the next day I am now a pro, multimillionaire pro, and I was playing literally for the Final Four
2 weeks ago.
4 days ago.
Whatever it was.
I mean,
yeah.
it's shocking. I have a strange feeling they're not finishing out their classes.
Probably not.
Are they just going to say?
Or maybe they'll say, hey, teach. I'll come back this summer.
Yeah, I need 3 weeks off.
When we wrap her up.
We
and
need
then
to see how long this run goes. One thing that was really cool at the X the other day, Reavers, we got there a little early because the bars were packed. West
7th was hopping?
Yeah, West 7th was hopping. Eagle Street, are you familiar with that bar?
Yeah.
That was like basically their last night open because they lost their lease, so they had been there 20 years.
I didn't know they were shutting their doors.
Yeah, so it's already like tearing up. Something new is going to come in there, right?
Don't tell me it's going to be let's build another condominium building.
No, I hope it's Cowboy Jacks. Because I know there's Wild Bill's right across the street. I hope it's just one of those cool bars. Okay. But anyways, everything's packed. The Apostles packed, Cassetta's packed, everything's packed. So we go into the stadium way early, right? Game's at 8:30, start 8:50, whatever it is. And I go up to order a beer, and I'm thinking, why did we come in here? Why I don't want to drink it. They said, hey, every drink's $5. I said, what? And he goes, happy hour till 8 o'clock. Every drink is $5.
Oh, there you go.
And I looked around and I went, wait, this just became a really good idea to get in here early because that was actually super reasonable. And I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. My wife's wines were $5. It was kind of cool.
I need to ask a business-related question then. If Eagle Street, did they allow the lease to expire knowing that it wasn't going to be feasible for them to keep their doors open anymore?
I do not know.
Because here's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Okay, if you're Mr. Eagle Street.
Yeah, Joe Castle.
And you decide, well, this is just isn't worth it for me anymore.
Yeah.
What's going to make someone else think that you're basically on the only corner in the entire city that's got the amount of traffic however many nights a week that there's stuff going on at the X?
Yeah.
If that person can't make it, what makes someone else think that they can?
Well, it could have just been they wanted to go a different way. I don't know the ins and outs of that, but you have a lease.
I'm just curious.
And sometimes the landlord says, "Oh, you were paying $10,000 a month. I'm making this number up, but now we want you to pay $20,000." And they might have just said, "Oh, okay, that's not worth it. Now we're not going to make anything." But the best part about it is my wife knows the owners of Eagle Street, so we go say hello, and then then I was kind of reminded that he has kids that go to my kids' school, right?
Okay.
And then I said to one of my daughters, I said, "Hey, did you know that I was talking to this guy and he has kids?" And my youngest daughter says, "Yeah, Addie, my oldest daughter, used to date his son." I said, "Wait, time out. First of all, She's never been on a date in her life.
Right.
So who are you talking about? And this was way back in grade school, like when they were little. I was
they
like,
were
oh.
boyfriend, girlfriend.
And then I said, you are not smart enough to mention that. So we could have gone there and maybe gotten free drinks.
Or free rings.
I mean, just anything. We could have done something, but you didn't mention that. Like, oh, by the way, although I was at someplace cool the other day, one of my daughter's friends, they own a restaurant, and I don't know them very well, and the restaurant was packed, and I was with my daughter, and I said, this couple was saying, no, you take that seat. And I'm like, absolutely not. You were here first. And they said, no, we're the owners. And I said, oh, okay, well, if it's okay, I'll take the seat. So we sit down, and then we all find out that we're all friends. And I didn't know that one of my daughters is best friends with their daughter. And then, of course, they won't accept any money. And, I was like, no, you don't have to do that. It was very, very sweet of them. But then I had to, my waiter, I said, I didn't bring any cash. Could you go charge me something so I can tip you on my credit card? Because he goes, I'm going to charge you a penny. And I said, okay, do whatever you got to do. But then I had to kind of explain because, later on in the business, they're going to say, wait, why do you have a 1 penny charge with a big tip on it? Big tip. That was me, big tipper. Just wanted to make sure you knew that.
Just the big tip.
Almost 12%.
Funny you mentioned $5 beers for happy hour.
Oh, really?
I got this from loyal listener Joe Schneider. Said, Reavers, Mike was light years ahead of Bud Light. Oh, he cannot be stumped. I saw this offer from a blog that I follow. I tried to claim the $5, but it seems they ran dry already. I'm not a Bud fan because it gives me gas, and there are about 1 million better beers in Minnesota alone. But I'd take a $5 for a few beer farts. Cheers, Joe. They were offering, via this blog anyway, to Venmo you a $5 Bud Light voucher.
Really?
Take a bow and a victory lap.
That was pretty cool. So Bud Light was saying, hey, we're going to give you a Venmo you a $5 Bud Light voucher?
Yes.
That is really cool.
And what's funny is I saw
26% last week. Every week they come out with their new sales data.
I forgot to ask you.
26% down last week.
What was your source? Because John Haidt and I argued about this, and I can't remember if this was on the show or off the
Twitter.
show. But what was the source?
Twitter. Do you think I would ever pay it? First of all, I don't believe anything on Twitter, but I'll quote it. I'll quote it, right? But I think just about everywhere is showing there is like a weekly beer stat, like they report all their sales, and it was down 26% last week. Yeah, you can find it. John couldn't find it. He couldn't find it.
No, I'm laughing because you totally pull the Reavers when Joe asks me a question.
Yeah. Joe, why do you need to know the details? Well, I mean, that's different. Okay, so here, 5 hours ago, this is the new sales drop. Bud Light sales dropped 21%, the New York Post.
Okay.
So that was the week of, I think. The one that I saw was the week of. So that is carrying through for a really long time. If there's a 21% drop in the long run of Bud Light is screwed.
Well, and I forget what we were watching, but I think we mentioned this last week, but the Pro-America with the horse running in the background.
Yes.
Budweiser commercial. We are founded. I think forged was the usually word.
Oh, yeah.
We are forged in American spirit. And even my wife, who's oblivious to everything in a good way. It's not that she's dumb. She doesn't pay attention to a lot of stuff.
Sure.
And she said, they're laying it on thick. Who are they trying to appeal to? And I said, are you unfamiliar with the story? And she said, what story? So,
oh, you're kidding.
But even she, knowing nothing about what was going on,
that it was like, what is going on?
Why are they laying it on so thick?
Oh, that's funny that she noticed. Okay, this is the New York Post, circa May 2nd to 2023. During the week ended April 22nd, the most recent industry data available, Bud Light sales plunged 21% versus 1 year ago, accelerating from a 17-point slide a week earlier and the initial drop-off of 6%. But the next paragraph says, meanwhile, beer volumes, the number of cases sold, whether in packs of 6, 12, 18, or 24, dropped an even steeper 26% week over week versus a 21% drop the week earlier. That is unbelievable. This would be the most expensive ad campaign in the history of ad campaigns if this thing keeps going the way it is.
Well, the thing that I find hilarious about it is there was a video of, Joe P. America, in his local liquor store saying, looky here, I'm not buying this one. And he goes to the Coors Light section and buys and I want to tell Joe P. America, well, bro, you realize they're owned by the same.
Are they? I don't even know that.
Yeah, they're both owned by InBev.
InBev. Okay, so here's a
which I find hilarious, but whatever.
But that's okay. That's okay because I'm not mad at InBev.
True.
I'm not mad at Bud Light, really.
But they ultimately are the ones that are going to suffer, right?
Yeah. So, okay, Bud Light remains the best-selling beer in the United States, with sales last year topping $4.8 billion. If you're down 20%, that's going to hurt. That's $1 billion just for the fat mathers. By comparison, the number 2 brand, which is what? You'll never get what the number 2 brand of beer is in
This is America or worldwide?
In America.
The number 2 brand.
You'll never guess this. I would never have guessed this beer.
The number 2 brand. And here's the logic I'm going to use.
Okay.
Because I'm going, okay, if I walk in, what am I seeing the most shelf space devoted to?
Logic.
And this is a recognizable brand.
Yeah, well, sure.
Okay.
Sure, yeah, it's the number 2 best-selling in the United States.
The number 2 best-selling brand, aside from what you said, Budweiser or
Bud Light.
Bud Light
Is the number 1 at $4.8 billion.
And then the number 2...
This is last year's sales.
For the sales of 2022 is going to have to be something obscure, but yet very popular, which is a complete contradiction. I'm realizing that as I'm talking this out.
I can hear these gears in your brain going.
I'm going to guess it's, let's see, worldwide. Oh, it's got to be Corona.
Close. Modelo Especial.
Okay, I was going to guess.
I would have never guessed Modelo.
I only guessed that. Okay, Modelo makes 100% sense because when you're not here,
Sure.
for instance, if you're anywhere in the South,
it's
it's
Modelo.
everywhere.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
everywhere. Absolutely everywhere.
Just to finish this line, it says, by comparison, the number 2 brand, Modelo, sold $3.75 billion. So hypothetically,
Wow.
Modelo might take over the first spot if Bud Light really has a 26% drop, while Michelob Ultra, owned by InBev, the same people, right,
Yep.
is $3.3 billion in sales. That's a third. That's according to Williams, Connecticut-based research firm. That is really, really interesting. What if Bud Light gets knocked off the top and Modelo becomes the best-selling Modelo, which I think is a Spanish beer.
Yes.
Right? It becomes the number 1 best-selling beer in America. How cool would that be?
Won't be surprising at all. Will it?
Yeah.
I mean, not to me.
Another line, I think it runs the risk of losing that number 1 position at the end of the calendar year to Modelo Especial, Williams thinks.
Wow, that's crazy.
Wow, that as I read this, that is just crazy. Just because they wanted to do a little bit of a different marketing campaign. And this poor lady that... is this Alyssa Heinerscheid, the Bud Light marketing executive?
The one that got gassed.
The one that got canned.
Yeah.
I mean, Melissa, it is kind of funny. I mean, I get that I could market to men and I could market to women, right? Maybe I could understand paint colors and I could market to both men and women. But Bud Light to say, hey, Bud Light is almost exclusively drunked by men,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And it would be kind of interesting to say, well, should we have, okay, let me ask you this.
All right.
If you're in charge of a marketing department, should you be most like the prototypical drinker of that product or user of that product? Or can you be someone totally tangential, like this gal, who maybe doesn't drink Bud Light, right? Maybe she's a wine drinker.
But bringing a completely different perspective to the table.
But is it the one that makes sense?
No.
Right?
See, I don't think that's a good idea.
Yeah. I mean, but so the people who
I'll
sell
rephrase that.
Porsches, should they only be middle-aged, balding white guys who buy Porsches?
Well, let me rephrase that because a couple of years ago, I worked for a company, and this was before I came to work for Hubbard, but I worked for a company that specialized in shipping. Okay. And I remember when I got the job, one of the requirements was, because I was in a supervisor lead role, which I know, insert joke there, Reavers is in charge of people. I know that's all funny. But one of the reasons that you came to the table was because you saw something that we're doing with a complete fresh set of eyes, right?
All right.
Where they got set in their ways of saying, well, this is just the way we do things. Well, no, he's got a good point here. Why do we do you know what I'm saying? So that in some cases can be good for a company.
Devil's advocate.
Yes.
Let me be another devil's advocate to your point.
All right.
The Beef Council of the United States. Should they hire a vegan? Because I'd say,
No.
you don't know beef.
Right.
So this gal, you don't drink Bud Light. You might not be a light beer drinker.
You don't know your audience.
You might not know your audience,
Right.
right? You could drink Bud Light, but you might just not do it. I mean, and I'm not here to pigeonhole people out of their jobs, right? That's not my goal. But now that I take it to the extremes, I think, maybe you shouldn't be a vegan and trying to sell for the Beef Council of America.
Yeah.
I don't even know if there's such a thing as a Beef Council of America.
Can I share with you something that was just sent in by a loyal listener, Terry?
Please.
Because I love giving these to you. This one's called The Coyote Principle, and I'm going to rip and read this.
Okay.
Because I know it's going to be good. And if it's not, I can just delete it from the show when I post it anyway.
Right.
The Coyote Principle, California. The governor of California is jogging with his dog along a nature trail. A coyote jumps out and attacks the governor's dog, killing it, then bites the governor. Oof. The governor starts to intervene, but reflects upon the movie Bambi and then realizes he should stop because the coyote's only doing what is natural. He calls animal control. Animal control captures the coyote and bills the state $200 testing for its diseases and $500 for relocating it. He calls a veterinarian. The vet collects the dead dog and bills the state $200 testing it for diseases. The governor goes to the hospital, spends $3,500 getting checked for diseases from the coyote, and on getting his bite wound bandaged. The running trail gets shut down for 6 months while Fish and Game conducts a $100,000 survey to make sure the area is now free of dangerous animals. The governor spends $50,000 in state funds implementing a coyote awareness program for residents of the area. The state legislature spends $2 million to study how to better treat rabies and how to permanently eradicate the disease throughout the world. The governor's security agent is fired for not stopping the attack. The state spends $150,000 to hire and train a new agent with additional special training on the nature of coyotes. PETA protests the coyotes' relocation and files a $5 million suit against the state. Now, let's go to Texas. The governor of Texas is in a wheelchair with his dog along a nature trail. A coyote jumps out and attacks his dog. Well, the governor shoots the coyote with a state-issued pistol and keeps on rolling. The governor has spent 50 cents on a 45 ACP hollow point cartridge. The buzzards eat the dead coyote. The end.
You know, it was kind
and that,
of funny.
my friends, is why California is broke and Texas is not.
Honest to God, I think you could find an example of almost that exact thing happening.
Yeah.
I don't know if that seems. It sounds Babylon Bee-ish, but you're like, wait, is that truly a story?
Well, reality's putting the Babylon Bee out of business.
Oh, that would be a really interesting, fun thing to do. See if we could find those examples.
And finally, here before we go, Mike's thoughts on paid Minnesota leave for all.
Oh,
I'm
yes,
kidding.
yes.
I'm joking.
I love it.
The only reason I said that is because Joe wanted me to ask you about that, and I said, Joe, are you out of your mind, Mike? First of all, you didn't even really know what was going on.
We
anyway.
already offer such great benefits.
And I'm thinking, no, I'm not going to ask Mike about that. Go do go bug somebody else.
Well, thank you, Reavers, for not asking me, and you are the best.
Please do us a favor and rate and review the show wherever you happen to be listening to the Weekly Scramble. We would appreciate it. His name is Mike Frattallone. My name is Chris Reavers. We'll talk to you again next week. Until then, cheers. Hey guys, feel like it's harder to get in shape and stay in shape? Well, our new sponsor, Nugenix Total T, is offering a complimentary bottle when you text 231-231 and enter the keyword garage. Hey, I get it. You get older and your body changes. And I got tired of personally having the dad bod. If you're feeling a little less like your old self, you don't have to. You don't have as much time to work out anymore, but you want that energy and you want the body you once had. Well, that's when I discovered Nugenix Total T and I felt revived, working out like I used to. If you want more energy to counter the negative physical effects of aging, Nugenix Total T Testosterone Booster with Testofen is going to help you turn back the clock. It's going to re-energize your workouts, and you will get better results at the gym, and it's going to help you look and feel like the man that you really want to be. Now, here's the difference. Nugenix Total T contains man-boosting key ingredients like Testofen. It has been validated in 5 clinical studies shown to boost free testosterone levels in men. While every product professes quality, many other products use generic ingredients that are often far less than clinical grade. With Nugenix Total T, you get the same clinical potency levels used in the trials. And Nugenix's formulation is backed by 10 years of science and research. Nugenix Total T is the #1 selling testosterone booster at GNC. And Nugenix Total T can help re-energize your life and help you get back the powerful, confident, good-looking warrior that you used to be. Now, get a complimentary bottle of Nugenix Total T when you text 231-231 and enter the keyword garage. Text now and get a bottle of Nugenix Thermo, their most powerful fat incinerator ever, with key ingredients to help you get back into shape fast, absolutely free. Text 231-231 and enter the keyword garage. Text 231-231 and enter the keyword garage. Texting enrolls you into recurring automated text messages. Consent not required to purchase. Message and data rates may apply.